Hello there folks and welcome back to another video. In this one we have even more Warhammer Age of Sigmar, The Last World rumours to go through, and I thought with this one, as I did with the last one, I'd kind of give you my thoughts. I'd run through what has been revealed again from Boole over on the TGA forums, shared here over on Daka Daka. And yeah, I thought I'd just give you my thoughts on all of these as we go through them and let you know what I think. So we'll just go through this point by point and I'll sort of talk about what I think and then go from there. As has already been pointed out in plenty of other videos out there on the internet, Boole and a lot of the other leakers were fairly on point when it came to all the things that had already been announced as part of Adepticon. So we saw the likes of the Cog Fort and things like that popping up, and that was all real, alongside things like the Night Runners and the Gutter Runners and stuff like that too. So, you know, they have some credibility to them when it comes to where things are going. And so obviously still take anything that I say here and anything that I read about with a pinch of salt, but know that it is also kind of already backed up by them having confirmed information about a whole bunch of stuff as well anyway. And as has been pointed out by the likes of Rob from The Honest Wargamer, this is stuff that, if it is happening, is coming out next year, and Games Workshop tend to work way, way in advance of an edition coming out, of a product coming out, maybe a year and a half in front of where it actually gets launched. And so having all this information now might actually be real because it's coming out of PDF copies, print copies, things like that have been shipped off all the way across the world to China and places like that in order to get printed. So we'll go through these and we'll just sort of talk about it and of course in the comments down below, be nice to each other. Of course, that's the nice thing, of course. Please do that. Like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff, as always. Don't forget there's also memberships and all that kind of thing. I even have affiliate links and all sorts of stuff down below in the comments for you to go and check out as well. So if you like what I do and you want more, then help me do that. It's always nice to have a little bit of extra cash to buy paints and things like that to help with my hobby journey. So there we go. But yes, let's dive into this. So these came out from Boole after Adepticon. And we'll sort of just read through these and I'll give you my thoughts after every point. So, Stormcast Eternals still have the ability to reforge, but it works completely differently now. They've become more like Crusaders from Diablo. When a Stormcast Eternal dies, their weapons and armor are shattered by a thunderbolt, and the power is transferred into a successor, along with their hopes and legacies. So when a Stormcast Eternal dies, it is now permanent. Now, I guess that feels like a natural next step beyond what we'd seen previously with the Stormcast Eternals in this current edition, where they lose all their memories over time through successive reforgings. And with Sigmar being dead, it would make sense that the Stormcast couldn't be reforged in the same way. I will say, and this is something that comes up later on anyway as we go through these, but this feels very Warhammer 40,000. It feels like Space Marine Gene Seed, although, of course, without the hopes and legacy things carrying through, I suppose. But that smacks to me of like a little bit of a lack of creativity on the point of Games Workshop, but then maybe they've done it so that it's a obvious next stepping point for somebody who's diving into the, Age of Sigmar now, the Lost World, after playing 40k. It's like, oh, it's like Space Marine. Even though they've tried so hard to distance themselves from Space Marines over the years. But anyway, we'll get to more of that later on. But just to begin with, not massively interested in that development there in terms of lore, but we'll have to wait and see, I guess. Anyway, at some point in the Last World, Stormcast Eternals and Sigmar did come into conflict. But after that, they grew closer, enduring the dark times together. So that's, again, sort of like mixing back into the Age of Myth and things that we saw from, this current version of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, where there was a dark time between the ending of the world that was and what becomes the Mortal Realms as we know it now, with Sigmar launching his attacks forth into Akshi to fight back the forces of chaos. The Stormcast Eternals are now revered by the cities of Sigmar, mainly because the people no longer fully understand what a Stormcast Eternal really is. They don't live among them, but the Stormcast Eternals still act as a shield of order, fighting on every front for the cities of Sigmar and for Sigmar. Again, sounds a lot like Space Marines. They're not really doing much to shake that Sigmarine vibe from them, but I suppose if it's handled well, it could be good, I guess. I'll have to wait and see. Again, it doesn't feel like it's a spark of creativity and excitement that we've had from Age of Sigmar over the last couple of years. It feels like them just sort of like rehashing something else and redoing it, a little bit like another COD or another FIFA game that comes out every year from the likes of EA and things like that. In the last world, the Age of Sigmar is now remembered as the Age of Myth, which again already exists anyway within the Age of Sigmar as we know it. So it's weird that they're keeping that remembering. People barely believe that there were once 8 old realms. After those realms were destroyed, the last world fell into the world of chaos, a period known as the Dark Times. It wasn't until the cities of Sigmar on different continents re-established contact and unified again that the Dark Times came to an end. That's when the Sigmarite calendar begins, right? During the Dark Time, humanity reforged alliances with the Duardin, the Elves, and the Seraphon, standing together ever since. Again, this feels like a rehash, a rebranding of what's already kind of been represented in the lore anyway, where all the different pantheons of the gods of order came together to make a pact that they were going to use that to stop chaos. And then there was all sorts of infighting, and Nagash turned on them and all that kind of thing. And Marathi Kane did her thing with Amelgard and that kind of stuff as well. So again, really weird that they're sort of just rehashing what's technically already happened in the lore in Age of Sigmar, but refluffing it in a way. I suppose it's sort of like history's been forgotten. It's being sort of retaught again. As for Sigmar's death, that's really just a claim made by Chaos Cultists. We've gone back and reviewed that part, and we're pretty sure Sigmar is not dead. The 5th edition core book, harking back to what I was just saying about this being a print version of the book or a PDF or something like a sample that's been sent off that people have read or proofread and that kind of thing, devotes an entire chapter to what happened to him, complete with illustrations. According to Sigmar's followers, he created the Old World and then vanished, but before that he defeated Archaon, and there's a detailed illustration of this. According to Chaos Cultists, Sigmar created the Old World and then vanished, but in their version, Archaon found him and killed him in the most brutal way possible. Again, this has an illustration. Again, sort of like history written by the victors kind of thing. Not having a sort of a narrative that you can pin your mass to so you can play around with it and have fun with the setting. Kind of makes sense. It's what they do with Warhammer 40,000, of course. And what Warhammer has done since, time immemorial, to be honest. We also then have what both versions agree on is this. Sigmar disappeared right after creating the last world. The only thing they confirm is that he met Archaon before vanishing. But in the later part of the books, Archaon is just as absent. He's gone into hiding for unknown reasons. Interesting stuff there as well. They do mention later on that he might be up in the north or something like that, stewing invasion up to go and attack. What really convinces us Sigmar is actually still alive are the events of the book. Multiple times he directly intervenes through divine miracles, wiping out Chaos forces and protecting the cities of Sigmar and Stormcast Eternals. Archaon refuses to show himself, however, whenever these miracles occur. Classic storytelling, sure sign he's still around. That would kind of make sense, I suppose. He becomes the god again. He's already been in the world as a mortal, becomes a demigod, walks off into the realms of chaos in Warhammer, the old world, and Warhammer Fantasy Battles. And then obviously he's come back and been a massive godly figure in Warhammer Age of Sigmar, went off, fought loads of god beasts, then shut himself behind the gates of Azir, and then unleashed the Stormcast Eternals, and has been going all sorts of different things. Used the Celestant Prime as his sort of like his marshal and that kind of thing. So, it's again sort of like retreading the same ground, but doing it with a different narrative, I suppose. The cities of Sigmar are now split into 2 nations. This is something we'd seen before, one of which is called the Sigmarite Protectorate, and that's mostly because they're located on different continents. By the time the narrative of the last world begins, the cities of Sigmar have already reunited across the sea, functioning again as a united faction. They're collectively called the Sigmarites, and both continents are home to many of the cities we know. Some have been renamed, and they're still the same cities. The continent made up of Akshi, Gur, and Shamon is Hammerhal, Hallowheart, Tempestmorn, Embergard, Porst Misthaven, Sturmcrad, and Ulfenkarn. Although, it seems a bit weird, all of them being mashed together considering how far away they were, I suppose. But, magic wizardry and all that kind of thing. On the continent formed from Shaish and Gairan, we have Wildholm, which was Hammerhold Gairan, Greywater Fastness, and Lethis. And then they've sort of gone into a little bit more about the other stuff. So Realmstone and then the spell still exists, so no changes there. Realmstone, for those who don't know, is every one of the realms has its own particular stone that confers certain properties and things like that. So in the case of Akshi, the Realmstone that you get there is sort of one that sort of imbues you with sort of like violent tendencies and things like that. And then in Gyran, it's Aqua Gyranus, I think, that comes from that, which is sort of like a water that is used as currency, but also to heal people. There's also a new resource called Blessed Godstone, which comes from the Shattered Fragments of Azir, which is sort of the realm of heaven. Think Valhalla, if you were thinking about it from the context of the Norse realms. During the Dark Time, huge amounts of Godstone fell as meteors across the last world. Most of it was originally statues of Sigmar from Azir. Now these fragments hold immense power, and the cities of Sigmar swarm to wherever they land, mining them and hauling them back to their cities. They see it as proof that Sigmar still walks the world, that he's not dead and continues to protect his people. Naturally, every time a Godstone deposit is discovered, it sparks a war. Maybe this is their attempt to do kind of like flashpoints within the world of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, like they do with kind of like the different areas that they fight in Warhammer 40,000 at the moment, like the Prior Nexus and things like that. Weird, interesting stuff there on that front as well, I suppose, but interesting, I guess. It gives them another reason to do something a little bit akin to like a Dawnbringer Crusade, perhaps, to go and find these Godstones, continuing that theme from the current edition of the game. For the enemies of City Sigmar, Godstone is just as valuable. It can banish demons and the undead, serve as the core component for rituals, or let a mortal wield magical power with just a small fragment. Pilgrim Navigators also rely on it, astropaths. They carve it into symbols that believe represent Sigmar's guidance, using it to lead armies through realm gates without falling to chaos. Again, this is very Warhammer 40,000 coded. A Pilgrim Navigator is just an astropath, and going through a realm gate without falling to chaos is like going through, the warp, whilst also sustaining a Geller field, as you would have in Warhammer 40,000, but instead moving through a warp gate to a different area of the world in the last world of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. So again, really weird on that front. Feels like, again, a lack of creativity. I'm going to keep saying this, that it feels like a lack of creativity, especially considering how broad and diverse and interesting the current realms are. This all feels like it's being dumbed down a little bit. But anyway, funny thing though, even though Sigmar is gone, he can still send down meteor showers of Godstone to help the cities of Sigmar and Stormcast Eternals push back their enemies. Archaon clearly knows what's going on, which is why the last world, the Everchosen, has pulled back to the 8 points in the northern Ruinlands, gathering Chaos forces. So this is very much like the idea of the Chaos Wastes in the old world, or Warhammer Fantasy Battles, the world that was, where Chaos is up there in the north, but beyond Norska, and was held back by Kislev and that kind of thing in the Sea of Claws. And in this, obviously, they're trying to do something a little bit similar in that respect. As for the last world, feeling a little bit much like Warhammer Fantasy Battles, there are plenty of differences. For starters, even the humblest peasant can use magic, and the small spirits of cities Sigmar still show up everywhere, helping people with their tasks. The map of the last world also doesn't match the real world, so it's not like the one that we have for the old world, where everything can be very much pinned down to sort of Europe, Africa, America, Asia, that kind of thing. The contents are literally just the original 8 realms, cut up and then stitched back together in different ways. And they say, honestly, it looks pretty cool. So, maybe if we were taking a sort of like a good standpoint on this could be quite fun. You never know, I suppose. In addition to the 2 main continents, there are 3 islands. Ulgaroth, with the Umbral Vale, which is where the Daughters of Cain live. We have the jungles of Itza, which is where the Seraphon come from. So very kind of Lustria coded. And then Ulgaroth is very sort of like Nagarothi? I think it was called Nagaroth, where the Dark Elves live. And then Hishia, which is where Settlers Gain still exists. Really like Settlers Gain as a place, a settlement. I really wish it did more of that. And that's where the cities of Sigmar live alongside the Lumineth, which is very akin to Ulthwan, I suppose, as well. And finally, and this is where a lot of people have really latched onto things, 4 new factions appearing in different parts of the map, each with their own concept art. So you've got the Karajin, which are not Grand Cathay. This is based on the Huan dynasty of China. Someone said something about sort of snake worshippers and things like that. That could be quite an interesting way for them to go with that. We then have the Kingdom of Lorenar, which is not Bretonia, which again is a little bit of a kind of like, right, okay, you're doing this not very original. The hands or fiefdoms, which are not Nippon, and it feels really weird that they use Nippon in this. I know Nippon is the traditional name for Japan, but it feels like a really weird one for them to throw into the mix for this. And then the Ursal chiefdoms, which is not Kislev, which is maybe where they'll make use of all those concept art pieces they did of bears and things like that that they never brought into the old world. Maybe they're going to bring those into Warhammer Age of Sigmar. So, you know, it's an interesting bit of additional lore. It feels less like a kind of, now we've got a little bit more detail. And if this is to be believed to be true, at least it feels like Games Workshop have put a little bit of effort into this. It just strikes me, and I said this before in the last Rumor video, it strikes me as being really just lacking in creativity. Like, I will obviously play Warhammer Age of Sigmar regardless because I love the mechanics of the game and I love the models and all that kind of thing. But I've really latched on to the lore and the background and the characters over this edition. Towards the end of third and the beginning of fourth, I've really sort of embraced the lore and what they've been trying to do with it. And I really love the realm design. I really love that they all feel unique. I love that it has this kind of like power metal, almost sort of semi-anime feel to it in terms of its like wildness and its weirdness. And it just gives so much scope for people to do interesting things when it comes to sculpting and that kind of stuff. And as I said in the last video as well, I don't think that the realms were massively hard to interpret. I guess it's just like going through a portal or like different planets. Admittedly, as they have said here, all the realms still exist. They've just been sort of smushed into one place, so someone could create a unified map of it now, I suppose, which wouldn't be any different from them what they're doing at the moment, I guess, to look at it with sort of like a silver lining. It just feels like they've put so much effort into the concepts that they've developed with Warhammer Age of Sigmar over the last little while that this feels like a step back, which is a little unfortunate. Still, you never know. It might be something that actually turns into something awesome. And the last world might bring more people in, and more people playing the game is never a bad thing. As I said, take everything that they've said here with a pinch of salt, because of course, it could all be complete nonsense. Yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments below, and we'll have a little bit of a discussion about all of this and these new rumors. Don't worry, it's not going to just be rumored videos on this channel. There will be more. I have something for Imperium Maledictum coming up soon, which is this here. So I'm going to be looking at the role-playing game and talking about the starter set and things like that. And of course, the battle tomes are coming out for Warhammer Age of Sigmar, for the Daughters of Cain, and who was the other ones? Oh my god, I've forgotten who they were. Anyway, I'm going to be doing more battle tome reviews as well. But anyway, yes. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I always like hearing what you have to say, and I love the conversations that come out of it as well. So, yeah, please drop your thoughts down there, and we will get into a nice chat. Like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Become a member, help me out in that way, or maybe use one of the affiliate links, which is always a great way of helping me as well. And I'll talk to you folks very, very soon. Bye for now.